everyone, and welcome to the Diplomacy Timing Window, where the rules are discussed and our opinions don't matter. My name is Kazadoom.
I'm Hungry Hippos.
And I'm the Half-Heard.
On today's episode, we like to start with announcing the much anticipated winner of the map contest. Drumroll. The winner is Strovel and his map named Loathe Thy Neighbor. Congratulations to Strovel.
Congratulations. Well done.
Yes.
Yep, great map.
It took a lot of deliberation, and we'd like to make a special mention to the runner-up. Their submission from Corn on the Cob.
Corn on the Cob.
Corn. As well as the rest of the submissions we received from everyone. Thank you for those. So the next steps will be working with our winner, Strovel, to create a 3, 4, and 5-player variants. And we'll probably post them on the channel on Discord so that everyone can see them, and then we'll work with the devs to put it into an upcoming release. So keep your eyes to the sky and your ears to the ground for this map and its variants, and it'll make its way to our beloved Twilight Wars app. So coming to an update near you.
Awesome. It's very exciting.
Yeah, looking forward to new maps always.
Definitely. All right, on to today's topic. I'm not gonna say it outright. I'll give you some hints. Who loves supernovas? Who can live and thrive in a supernova? And in case you haven't figured it out yet, I'll give you a few more. Why was this considered an option? They only need red tech. Can this be any more boring? And where are we going with this? Who's making me read this? Well, if you haven't guessed it yet, the answer is the Muatt. The worst thing since microwaved pizza.
Ugh, so gross.
It's disgusting. Please don't do that.
Just eat it cold.
Well, we're going to trash these Jolnar servants like they have been dosed with a fireman's hose. There are so many places to poke, so let's dive in and get to ripping and tearing. So I'll start us off. We list of some reasons why the Embers of Muatt are just plain out bad. And the first one I'm going to go with is their starting units. Right? They start with a single war sun, a singular war sun, 2 fighters, and 4 infantry. So tell me, what's your guys' take on this?
So
they all fit into the war sun. That's fine, right?
No, it's not fine. It's your only ship.
It's efficient. You could say it's efficient.
Plus, it's a singular war sun, which means, yes, you get 3 3s, but like you're probably more likely to want to like hold on to that and cradle it like it was some sort of like special gem,
incredible,
which means it's completely
precious
useless
baby
to you other than its carrying capacity.
And I mean, honestly, they're still destroy the greatest ship out there in the early game, maybe. So you have to tend to it quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think War Sun, if anything, is a liability.
Yeah.
For Muatt, right? Like, oh man, you lose that, and you might as well throw in the towel.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you're next to maybe the Winnu, who have 2 ships and they're sprinting to Mechatol, and you could probably take advantage of that. Other than that, it is as Half-Heard said, it's a liability.
But where are you taking advantage? Because you only have the 1 ship, so you ain't going far and you ain't going wide.
Maybe I'm playing Winnu wrong, but I feel as though it takes me at least 2 full rounds to secure myself as Winnu, maybe 2.5, and by then Embers have got to figure something out.
Well, but I think Embers have the same problem, because think of their, first of all, they have terrible warfare timing, so the odds of them getting some extra ships up in round 1 is pretty slim to none.
But just saying, compared to the Winnu, they at least have 4 infantry, so if they get something with warfare, they can at least take another system. Winnu just has 3 resources, which means that they can get a carrier, but don't have the infantry to get systems with it. Yeah. So yeah.
So let's get to their tech path. they start with plasma scoring. Is that possibly the worst starting tech in the game?
The worst thing since Justin Bieber. Yeah, I think
I
it's a
generally
strong
don't
runner.
like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what can be worse? Let's brainstorm here, right? You got arguably, I would say the SAR starting with anti-mass could be worse if anti-mass didn't mesh so well with
Enable
their
for gravity drive and their
mesh with
faction
their
tech.
chaos mapping. Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
also stops, I mean, it makes it less likely to get hit by a PDS by you know,
yes.
10% or something like that.
10%, yeah.
But in here, we have plasma scoring where, I mean, you're using your War Sun to bombard. Do you really need to have another dice roll?
Let's put it like
Seems
this:
a little
plasma scoring
redundant.
by itself is not a bad tech. It's just that you reap the benefits of the tech in round 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
When you actually bombard, when you need to defend something. Until
you
then,
don't-
it's completely worthless, aside from being a bit of a threat. If
combat
it's
tech
returned.
early on is not the greatest. That's for sure.
While if you start with green, you get at least the action
that extra
card. If you
action
start
card.
with starving tools, you get the free resource. If you start with, as you said, the asteroid tech, you can at least get gravity drive. So there's always something that you can do with it. But here it doesn't lead into anything early, and it's not useful to be at the beginning of the game.
And as we said, Muatt are basically entirely red tech path. So at the
They
very
got that going for them.
best, it's going in the right direction in terms of tech path.
Yeah, which leads us into their faction tech number 1, which is the Magnus reactor, which allows you to actually fly into supernovas. Before that, you can only fly through them. And it also kind of serves as a space dock replacement, because if you have units in the supernova, you can build up to 5 plastic with it. And it counts as your unit, so it applies all those juicy bonuses to it.
What if the supernova isn't right next to you or where you want it to be?
What if there's no supernova in the game?
You ignore it. Just ignore it. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And
you replace it with duranium, which questionable for.
Yeah, you can regenerate your.
Do you really want to be? Yeah. Do you really want to be sustaining all day with your War
Sun?
If you draw a lot of sabotages, why not? But
yeah, the worst thing since El Nino.
Yeah, that's a key.
A lot of big
there.
ifs surrounding this.
I'm not sure I'm sustaining damaging my 10 or 12 cost unit.
Can you name a faction tech worse than Magnus Reactor? Maybe bioplasmosis.
Yes, that's a good one. Arborec. The Yin tech, the yellow with 2 prerequisites where you can assign a hit by sacrificing something at the beginning of combat.
Barony's L1.
Oh man,
it's actually not even that bad sometimes.
Such a good late. That's one of the best late game techs. Are you kidding me?
If you need it, if you need to get a few more infantry on the ground, it's amazing. But
it's great for cheeky late game steals too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Right. Yeah, but I mean, it's not apparently something you have to get every game, but it's something that makes sense.
Yeah, it's definitely not on Magnus Reactor level, I would say.
I mean, Magnus can be great if you have the supernova placed,
if you get the really beautiful placement of having a supernova next to your neighbor's home system, then you're laughing.
I mean, also you guys said red tech path. For me, I still tend to prefer a blue tech path with them, especially if I can find a skip somewhere to get to graph drive and get some speedy stuff and just graph drive my son.
So here's the thing.
That's what I usually try.
I've played against an Embers who got the final blue tech. Was that some shielding thing?
Light wave.
Light wave deflectors. Thank you. And like it's only helpful if you have your super specials War Sun that goes move 3.
get the 3. I'm just saying get other useful smaller upgrades to your game and not go for that war sun that takes forever to get to. I mean, yes, it is movement 3, but you only need 1 war sun with movement 2 with the graph drive to work your way to where you need to be. But
So
it's just something that
speaking
I try
of,
every now and then.
just because we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, we should speak to the next faction upgrade, which is the upgraded war sun.
Well, it's the best ship in the game.
It is the best ship in the game, but
movement 3, it's cruiser 3, cruiser 2 level. It carries
movement 3 is
things.
great. You know, the discount, right? Two resource discount on the cost definitely seems worthwhile.
That's very helpful. Yeah.
What else has movement 3 though? Like it's gonna be
Cruiser
alone.
2 is the only other ship in the game that has movement 3.
And
I that's the thing I'd like to bring up is that it again, talking about your liability of your war suns with a 3 movement, it very likely would be easy for you to get your war sun isolated from the rest of your fleet.
I mean, the thing with Muatt that I've learned playing them a few times, as soon as you commit your war sun to a system, you're a sitting duck and your whole turn can go to hell. You basically have to stall out and just wait and do nothing with your war sun, just so that nobody can come to you before you're locked down.
But as we've learned, especially with the early game, Muatt isn't exactly the stalling faction.
I mean, you could argue that you're token efficient in the first few rounds, but you can't do anything.
You save them up for the late game, I guess.
I mean, that happens sometimes with some factions in some early games where I just have like an abundance of tokens. Like, remember my SAR game? I have infinite tokens, but I can't do anything because I just have one system. With
that game.
I have tons of tokens to throw around, so I'm just like tossing out my action cards to annoy people. So, well.
Oh, I mean, talking about the tokens, let's talk about their 2. Well, let's talk, I guess, first about their faction ability, which is their Star Forge. Let's see, you spend a strategy token, you can build a destroyer or 2 fighters in a system that has a war sun. The worst thing since the late Devonian extinction.
I mean, is that worth 1 command token?
Yeah, so there's a few things that I take issue with this, and that's certainly one of them is first of all, is it worth it, right? A command token for 1 resource worth of units.
I mean, you could make the same point with Soul, and Soul is one of the best factions in the game.
Soul has
a very similar ability with the infantry.
that they don't have the token shortage, I feel.
Exactly, yeah.
And Soul,
and they can do it anywhere and not just on the war sun.
Yeah. When you have the infantry, they're on a planet, and it's hard to destroy Soul infantry.
Yeah.
They breed like babies.
And I get it, right? Because this is similar to basically say like, it's a way to buff up the war sun so that it makes it harder to kill the war sun, right? But again, to me, this is just a band-aid for the Muatt war sun liability issue that we keep seeming to run into.
It's the worst thing since single-use plastic.
I mean, I think it's not a good ability on its own, but if you have a map where you have a lot of influence, it can come in handy.
Again,
great,
very map dependent.
It gets super cool when you get the bonus tokens whenever you spend the trade goods whenever you spend a token from a strategy. Then it's really fun with the POK expansion, but for now, meh.
Well, so that means with all this crap, they must have an awesome flagship, right?
Well, and funny you should mention, because the Muatt have a second way of using strategy tokens for component actions, and that is with their flagship, where you can make cruisers from your flagship. Is there synergy here? Wait, am I missing something? Cruisers?
Why?
Destroyers are just better.
So random. So random. Yeah, I would actually almost prefer if it was a destroyer. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, the other way around would have been better. Cruisers with the
Star Forge,
the war sun, yeah.
I mean, either way, it's
No, I like destroyers in the early game. I want destroyers.
yeah. No, the confusers, the cruisers from the flagship, the
confusers.
confusers. That's what they should be because
Yeah.
it confuses the heck out of me.
It
It comes out of nowhere.
It confuses your tech path because for some reason, if you get the flagship, you feel like you want Cruiser 2, which is a complete sidestep from anything you could do.
Yeah, are you talking about blue tech? You're talking about red tech. Now you're talking about all tech. It's like, make up your mind. This flagship, this Muatt flagship, to me, is the worst thing since pineapple on pizza. I said it.
Does it
Don't
do
get pineapple on
anything
your
else?
pizza. It's terrible.
I agree. Or unless,
like
especially if
pineapple
it's
on
canned pineapple.
Can't talk to you guys.
I'm not offended by
The
fresh
Italian
pineapple,
won't
but
talk to me.
canned pineapple is the worst on pizza, especially.
Just don't do it. It's just,
So does the flagship do anything else, or does it just poop?
it's got regular 1 movement, 3 capacity. I'm pretty sure. I think it rolls 2 dice. It's got that going for it.
At least
doesn't have
rolls
bombard or
2
anything?
dice, like almost any
Has no
other
bombard.
flagship.
I always
yeah.
mistake the ability from the Barony flagship with the Muatt one because I feel
Yeah,
like the Muatt one should ignore PDS2 as well and also have some bombard for
No,
good
it's
measure.
pretty vanilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for a faction that doesn't have a lot of, token generation, right? You're not. I mean, when are you ever going green tech, right? You're not going to be getting hyper metabolism with these guys generally.
No.
Yeah.
You would have to hope that you could get your Jolnar overlords to give you a research agreement.
I mean, one thing is you could get the cruiser upgrade and go blue tech path and get that light wave, like Hippos mentioned, right? But then the issue is there's no way you're also going to get the upgraded War Sun and be able to use all of that together. It's just not going to happen. It's just too much.
Yeah, it's just hard. There's no. I think the tech path is very dependent on what skips you have available, and that makes your game hard in terms of planning it from the get-go.
It's so weird because when you think of Muatt, it's like, yes, I have a War Sun, but then when you play them, you're like, my War Sun's cost
just have a War Sun.
10 or 12 resources depending on which upgrade you have, and like, who has that many resources? I can't build anymore.
It's just causing stress.
I know, and so you're like, it's almost like a glass cannon. As soon as it's hit one shot and it's over, you got nothing left.
Yeah. 12 reasons. And I mean, I always struggle with this too. Do you build your second War Sun fast? I find I'm always like, but it's 12. I want to wait till it's cost 10, like I'm nickel and diamond myself, right? And I'm like, but what do you do? Do you get it early? Do you not? Right?
If you do, you can't afford to upgrade your tech. I mean, I don't know who has that many high resource planets around them to be able to do both. That's not nice.
So I always find that to be, a lousy conundrum.
Yeah. So what is good about these guys? Why do people select them?
4 commodities.
They do have a 4 commodity pool.
Hooray!
So hooray!
Hooray! No,
I guess. I mean, it is the best, other than Hakan, right? It's the best commodity pool. So
you can send out your trade destroyer. Oh, wait a second! You don't have a trade destroyer that you can send out because you only have 1 person.
You can't even take advantage of some trading round one because you
2
don't even have units to use tokens that you can't even do anything with.
You can poop out a destroyer under your War Sun. You can fly the destroyer over for 2 tokens. You can finally trade.
Amazing.
Oh man!
What about their faction promissory note? How do we feel about that? Is that okay?
I've seen that go for quite a high price. So for those that are willing to do it, and I think only the factions like Hakan could afford it, because you could trade in a trade agreement with Hakan and maybe a couple resources or trade goods, and someone would trade it for you, and that secures you know, like maybe 9 to 12 trade goods for Muatt, but you know, there's not too many times where Hakan is going to be on the board with you. It's not a guarantee. It's another if. So
yeah, I mean the main issue that I have with it, and I mean it's good that there's a restriction on it, but the cost to yourself by losing your fleet pool token
Exactly.
is very steep, and it's hard for people to actually pay the price that it's worth.
Exactly.
So here's the
So you
question
have to
then:
settle for less.
how much is it worth? Like I was saying 9 to 12 resource. Is it
Nominally, I would say 9 or 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
You
mean,
can get 6, 7 for it usually in the early game.
I've done it
Who-
for, I actually did it, you kind of mentioned this earlier, Hippos. I've actually done it in a game where I trade it for, I forget exactly what it was. Let's say for argument's sake, 5 trade goods and research agreement,
Well, that's
yeah,
a
that's
good trade.
possible.
right?
Yeah,
Because
so
then you're kind of getting, you get the cost of the fleet token you're losing, plus a pretty balanced thing in, you get an early tech versus Jolnar gets a early War Sun tech, right?
Yeah, that's
but
that's a relatively fair one.
It's a pretty fair one, right? So again,
Plus-
but
Think about
again, you're very dependent on having them close by, right? To do that early.
But think about it like this: the promissory note costs you 3, and the value of what they get is 3 influence for the token they need to pay for tech, and 4 resources for the tech secondary, which means that this is already 10 resources worth, not
So Hippos,
including
you know,
any tech skips you need to get there. So it's crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
Crazy much value you get there.
Yeah, and not every faction's promissory note is worth something like Jolnar's.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not many people who are going to be able to even afford it near the first 2 rounds. So it's great if someone like Hakan or Jolnar's around, but that's another if.
Another if. These guys love their ifs, ands, and buts.
I mean, it's very comparable to the Jolnar promissory note, but Jolnar is just so much more tradable.
Yes. Yeah.
I have not had, just as an aside note, I have not had success selling my research agreement. Maybe I don't try hard enough, but
well, that one game where tech wasn't picked 3 times in this round.
That's interesting.
Doesn't help.
That was pretty frustrating.
All right. So
what else do these guys going for them?
Yes, for resource home system. That's one of the few factions that can auto do secondary tech, which is, I guess, nice if you're going to spend your resources on that.
Yeah, I guess it's nice to have the option. I personally sometimes almost wish it wasn't worth that much, especially as Muatt, because you're so dependent on getting more plastic on the board early. So you're like, do I get the tech? Do I not? Do I save it for warfare? What do I do?
I usually don't tech round 1 with Muatt.
So it's almost like a poisoned blade there.
Trap.
Yeah, it's a trap. It's a trap.
But then how are you going to get your War Sun too?
Yeah, that's exactly missing.
Unless you're Kaza, who doesn't want it.
But I guess with the 4 resource home system, you at least can produce 6 things when you're producing. So I guess you got that going for you.
A lot of fighters, infantry.
And,
in the end, I think they're a very bad 10-point faction, but in 14 points you can at least leverage your amazing techs. Yeah, you can get to a point where you can work your way around the map. You can do stuff. You get stuff done.
Yeah, they need that time to build up, because they don't.
And even then, you're so prone to be disrupted.
Yep. And all you need is one person to take advantage of your vulnerabilities, which you have plenty of. So what do you guys think? My vote is that the Embers are the worst thing since the season finale of Game of Thrones. That's pretty bad.
That's
one thing is for sure, there's good stuff coming for them. That's all I can say there.
In POK, are you referring to?
In POK, I've played them. They're amazingly fun to play.
They get some much needed love in POK. It's almost like some of these points that we brought up are specifically addressed.
Absolutely, yeah.
I have I mean, out of the bottom tier that I have, I would have a hard time deciding between who's worse, Muatt or say like the ghosts. I really am not appreciative of the ghosts and base game. And Winu are not my favorite in base game either.
I've had much more success with Ghosts base game than I've had with Muatt and Winu combined base game. I would
Only
say.
because that base game that you're in had no combat based objectives.
Ghosts,
I'm in a
ghosts
few
are
Ghost
fun. I
games,
wouldn't
and
put
all of them
ghosts
are
in
going
the-
really well. I can't say the same for my
I-
Winu and
I wouldn't put
Muatt
ghosts in the lower tier.
It just
But
is my opinion.
Base
Yeah,
game,
yeah.
base game Winu and base game Muatt are atrocious to play sometimes.
Yes. At least we agreed there,
Tough
yes.
Well, I think we've spent enough time stalling in this timing window, so let's hit the pass button and keep the game moving. The worst thing since feathered dinosaurs. The worst thing since Starbucks mocha frappuccinos.